Belgium as we get this qualifying session underway. 20 minutes on the clock, and we eliminate the slowest 7 cars to give us 16 to do battle in qualifying 2, and they're all filing out, all getting an early taste of the track this morning.
Yes, of course, what happens, the whole field goes out at one time, and I'm assuming that a lot of them will come straight back in again, just have a quick check around the car to ensure that everything is fine, but just really hanging back. If you're not at the very front of the grid to get onto the track first, then just wait a minute or two and give yourself that little bit of space. But I suspect the majority will make their way back into the pits, have a quick check, and then start their jobs.
Just looking down now, it's the Mad Croc Corvette, Julian Juice, qualifying race win at Spa in that particular car. And back out on track we can go now with the second of the young driver Aston Martin, Stefan Muckin, and Pedro Lamy, the home favourite here. How the fans that will come to Portimao would love to see success with Pedro Lamy, but a real tough job on his hands, as you were mentioning, John. The conditions of this car just doesn't like it hot.
It's just something that, you know, no racing car likes hot conditions, but some like it better than others. Pedro, of course, a lot of experience with the Aston Martin team at Le Mans in particular, where he was a part of that team along with Thomas Enger, who's in the other car along with Darren Turner. So there's a lot of knowledge, experience, and hopefully that will actually work to their advantage and they can find a way to deal with the conditions. But I think the car, in part, is built so precisely that when you do get a high ambient temperature, there's not an awful lot of adjustment that they've got access to improve the car.
So let's follow this Aston Martin. Stefan Muckin behind the wheel around the 4.7 kilometres here at Portimao, already coming up behind one of the 4 GTs there, and did very well just to scoot round out of the way and not be held up in his time.
No, and a little bit of, I think, consideration from the 4 to allow the Aston Martin to get through without it being impeded. So the 2 Astons running line astern, the 2 cars that came out first and second onto the circuit. Interesting, the second of the 2 cars pulling over to the centre of the track to try and avoid the bumps under braking into turn 6.
So noticeable, those bumps, as you drop down towards that hairpin. Really, really difficult for the driver to keep the car pointed, keep it steady. Another few more bumps there. All the drivers this weekend have been talking about the bumps on this circuit, built in 2008, but the asphalt now just settling down a bit and needing to settle down a little bit more in some places.
But also, you know, bumps actually are a part of the character of any racetrack. And to consider that all racetracks should be billiard table smooth, I don't think that's not a racetrack. I think I'll be interested to see whether that pace is purely from a fresh set of tyres, and whether that pace is something they can pursue for the duration of the actual race itself, rather than just going for a single quick lap.
Now, what's happened here?
Into turn
4, another huge, big lock-up.
It's it's not even very unloaded. So inside right front again, we've seen it in Fords and the Lamborghini.
Frank Cuccelli in that Lamborghini. Let's stay on board for a lap around Portimao here, and we're climbing up all the time. Fastest first sector from car number 13, Mark Henrici, and you can see there, almost pointing at the sun as you go over the crest.
Yes, then the compression, the bottom of the hill, then climbing up again, pointing skywards. Where's the apex? But you've got to stay close to the curve, because there it is, but you don't see that from the driver's perspective until you actually get to the plateau.
He set a personal best, Mark Henrici, through the middle sector as well. This is looking up to be a decent lap at the moment. Another right-hand turn, slower right-hand turn at turn 15, 84 kilometres an hour in 3rd gear. Maybe second, just slowing down a bit more. Now the Corvette gets on the gas.
Yeah, but you can hear him waiting. Pick up the throttle. He can't get the throttle on until the car's pointing in a straight line, having to breathe the engine through 16.
And down they come now, the Corvette, through that parabolic and onto the main straight. Where's this lap time going to be? Good enough for 4th place overall, only a 10th and a half off the pace of car number 25, which currently has the fastest time, Frank Cuccelli, in that Lamborghini. We're seeing, John, aren't we? You lock up, then it's an indication that you are pushing that little bit harder and you're going to go on and make a decent time. So maybe not flat spotting the tyres there, Frank Cuccelli. Now a change of tyres for the Benoldi and Ramos, the Benoldi Ramos Maserati. Warren Hughes, by the way, back out on track once again. So they've fixed whatever they need to fix in that Sumo Power Nissan. There's Thomas Enger waiting for his chance to come, and it should come. Darren Turner at the moment, 8th fastest. He's done well to get that Aston Martin in the top 10.
Absolutely, and that was their principal objective, I think, to get through qualifying 1, to get into 2. What happens after 2? Well, they'll take, but they want to make sure they get into 2 and get a strong performance. Lovely to get into qualifying 1, but I think realistically they're looking at best getting into qualifying 2.
At the moment, Peter Cox in the Lamborghini has to get out of the bottom 7. He's 20th fastest at the moment, only 3 cars behind him, and we can ride on board with this Lamborghini. Taking a lot of curve on the entry there into what is turn 10, little left-hand kink. And he's 1.2 seconds off the pace for the first 2 sectors. He's slow, is Peter Cox. This is maybe not going to be good enough.
No, he just hasn't got the turn in, the grip. You're having to hear the throttle being just wait. Again, traffic, but not a problem. And this turn 15, it falls away from you. Double apex corner. And the problem is, again, if you haven't got the front bite, it will just drift out to the outside.
Going to drag the car back into the inside again. Not taking a huge amount of green concrete there, and maybe lifting off a touch to the
Yeah, no, he's really breathing the engine coming through. Turn 16, waiting again all the time on 44.7. Well, that's not anywhere near where we expect to see the Lamborghini and Peter Cox.
No, quite. 21st out of 23, only 2 cars behind him in terms of the standing. Warren Hughes, who has had trouble, of course, with that Nissan, back out on track once again.
There's Thomas Munch in the 4GT. Once again, just having to make a correction at the point of entering into turn 16.
They've just swapped around. Jamie Campbell-Walter now in that Sumo Power Nissan, so maybe the transponder's just been flicked to have the right driver in it. Was showing up as Warren Hughes before it, as that Ford goes 5th fastest overall. Frank Cacelli still quickest with a time of 1:43.1, his last lap time. So they're consistently lapping around that mark.
It's interesting that the one of the Lamborghinis is quickest, and the second Lamborghini is 21st, so there's nothing wrong with the car, but the Nissan, and that really looks like it is a handful indeed, coming up the hill up towards turn 15.
Carl Wendlinger.
Yeah, it just got away, and once the momentum, the pendulum effect, there was nothing that the driver was capable of doing.
So Thomas Munch, let's ride back on board with the Ford GT Matak now. Little corrections on the steering wheel, just having to fight a little bit of understeer there.
A lot of corrections. I mean, that's coming through turn 8 and into turn 9, and having to fight the car all the way through. Then the quick flick 10 and up the hill once again into turn 11.
The sunlight glinting down on the bodywork. The Matek drops down once again into the valley, into the compression.
It looks a lot less dramatic from the outside, but when you get the onboard shot, you can see just how much work is going in behind the wheel.
Push yourself down in a go-kart or something like that down that hill there. Certainly not without a decent set of brakes on board, I must admit. It's a very, very steep drop. And no time other than the main straight for the drivers really to relax here at Portimao. Time to beat 1:42.7. Ford's not going to do that. 5th fastest overall, 1.5 seconds off the pace. Looking now at the bottom 7, because they're the ones that need to get a bit of a move on, try and improve their time.
Well, just a minute remaining in this session, and anybody in the pit lane, it's too late. But not for this Lamborghini.
So Peter Cox, the Lamborghini, way down in the timings at the moment, struggling. 21st fastest. Thomas Munch as well, the other Ford GT, 2nd slowest. and a second and a half off the pace. Really starting to struggle.
Well, two car driver combinations that are well out of position, there's no question about that. And Peter Cox, 21st, doesn't look like he's going to do anything better. So it looks as if he's going to drop out of this first qualifying hurdle for GT1. Comes through, final turn, and he's actually going to go in the pit lane.
Yeah, he's aborted the lap now, as the checkered flag is now flying. Jonathan Hershey is out of it as well. Carl Wendlinger, unless he can improve on his time. We saw him struggling in that Swiss racing team Nissan, and going for a half spin. Well, he's 19th fastest. Also down there, Marcus Paltalen, the other Ford GT Matek. The two Ford GT Matek cars really struggling in this qualifying one session.
I mean, I'm confused, because yesterday afternoon, Thomas Munch, that car, did a 143.4. Saturday morning, Thomas Munch in the same car, a 144.1. 0.6 plus of a second missing. Where's it gone?
The track conditions, I suppose in the afternoon it gets warmer. This obviously a car that likes the hotter temperatures on the track, but it's not a cold day by any stretch of the imagination here in Portimao.
No, at all. I mean, it's very straight. Likewise, Peter Cox, a 144.1 yesterday. Today, well, that was his last lap. We're looking at 159 though. But there's clearly Thomas Munch. Something has changed, because the car has gone backwards. Went with new tyres in this session, qualifying for the grid. You would expect that car to be running close to the front, in effect, as his teammate's car is doing.
And now just making a limp, as it were, back to the pits once again. Maybe trying to get some data as well from the tyres, something the engineers can use for the race. But for this qualifying race, Thomas Munch, second in the championship, is going to be starting way down at the back of the grid. He needs a miracle, doesn't he, to score points in that qualifying race where only the top three score.
In fairness, the sister car driven at the minute by Nicholas Prost, it's only in 17th position on the 144.0. So
they've missed out as well.
They've missed out as well. And I know that talking to Neil Yarney, Neil was saying, I think, first person in this case, that car is capable of going quicker than he thought Nicholas could pedal it.
Now, tyre wear is obviously going to be crucial here. That's, I think, one of those lockups that we've seen.
Well, the tyre engineer from Michelin, I think he's trying to take a slice. I think that's build-up on the tyre, just trying to get that build-up cleared off the tread surface. But it did look like there was a deep groove laterally across that tyre.
Didn't it just? So, that first qualifying session is now done with. And for Thomas Munch, it has been a huge disappointment, but for some, it's been absolutely superb. Frank Cacelli.
Yeah, I mean, a good run. Absolutely delighted there.
So Richard Westbrook was hoping to go out for qualifying two. It's not going to happen. He's talking to Haley.
Richard, not quite the Q1 you were hoping for.
No, it's a terrible result for us. You know, we should be doing a lot better than that. Thomas was complaining about the setup. It was a lot of understeer on the first set of tyres and then oversteer on the second set. So, c'est la vie.
And how has the car felt through the practices?
Yeah, good. We were first yesterday, but it seems to have lost the setup today, so we'll speak about it now. But it's not the end of the world, but it's not great.
Thank you, Richard.
Cheers.
Well, you can see and hear the disappointment in Richard Westbrook's voice. As I mentioned yesterday, that car-driver combination were the quickest. Car setups don't disappear automatically. Either the team have thought they might do something really clever and really trick, and this is going to make us a lot more competitive, or just somewhere they've lost the plot. And certainly one set of tyres understeer, another set of tyres oversteer. Has to be explained somewhere.
And they'll be doing an awful lot of talking, won't they, down at Lamborghini as well. Cacelli, fastest overall, but Peter Cox in the sister Ryder car, only 21st fastest, as we'll see in a moment. Good performance by Darren Turner to get that Aston Martin into the top 10. He was speaking yesterday about damage limitation for this week. Remember that, the car that had the double win at the Nürburgring. Well, he's limited the damage quite nicely so far.
Yes, indeed, and he's achieved objects to get through to the second qualifying round, so that's been done. What will happen thereafter is going to be well down to Darren and to Thomas Enger, whether they can drag it into qualifying one. If they do, they'll be very happy guys.
And they're just completing the cars. Meanwhile, over at Lamborghini, Haley's talking to Peter Cox.
Peter, unfortunately, couldn't quite get the pace in the Lamborghini.
No, I mean, yesterday we were quite okay. We made some overnight setup changes, and I think we went the wrong way because I didn't find any grip in the car, and it was just difficult. And this was the pace that was, and I cannot go any quicker.
Thank you, Peter.
Once again, work done in the garage overnight has not paid dividends on the track on a Saturday morning.
Well, I know that drivers and engineers are always very capable at finding half a second here, another tenth there, 3/4 somewhere else, and they end up with about a 5-second performance gain in the garage. You know, go back to basics, go to where you started off on Friday and work forward from there.
Jamie Campbell-Walter, Warren Hughes in deep conversation there over at Nissan as well. Campbell-Walter explaining what was wrong with his Nissan. They need to get qualifying sorted, don't they, in that team?
Yeah, and you can see Jamie Campbell-Walter, his face, certainly, you know, he's had a lot of exercise in his Nissan in that first 15-minute session. Warren Hughes more passively standing and listening to it, but there's something clearly not working for that Nissan GT-R, and they need to find it, but of course it's too late. They're not into qualifying soon.
So let's pick up Miguel Ramos, Portuguese driver, third in a Maserati in the GT Championship race last year in Portimao, and we're riding on board with him at the moment. Sixth gear by the end of the straight, 270 miles an hour. Interesting, John, dropping down to third gear for that first turn.
Yes, I mean, it's a difficult corner. It's a corner that you think is quicker than it actually is. So the Maserati goes down to third gear, down to first gear, in fact, for turn 4. It even surprises me more than third gear for turn 1. Up to fourth gear, gets sixth gear coming down the hill. No, he's not going to get sixth gear. He holds it in fourth all the way down the hill. And again, you know, the Maserati with maybe a little bit less horsepower than some of the other competitors, 540 against 650 for the Corvettes. I mean, that is a penalty in terms of just out-and-out ability to drag the car down the straight.
So we continue riding on board. This is turn 9, second gear corner, 80 kilometers an hour. Just a little correction, a bit of oversteer as he exited that corner, and you can see the undulations as we swing left-handed now and point almost at the blazing hot sunshine. And a corner, this one, turn 12, where you always feel the car is being forced out far wider than you want it to be.
To me, it's the most tricky of the corners here, the 16 corners. And Portimao, it's the difficult corner because you don't see the apex, and of course if you are struggling with an imbalanced car and you can't place the car with the accuracy that you need to, then it will penalise you. And again, the same in turn 15, track folds away from you all the time, and then into this wonderful turn 16, takes a big bite at the inside of the corner over the AstroTurf, then lets the car free up on the exit. Let's see what the time is.
Is it going to be anywhere near the Lamborghini of Jos Mensen? It is by 900ths of a second, but slightly slower, and the Maserati picking up a lot of time in the final sector there.
The difficulty that they will face, and this is going to be the issue at the start of the race, is that they are liable to get mugged by the power of Ford GT and that of the Chevrolet in particular, if they are around the Maserati in the run down into turn 1. And that the Maserati needs to have momentum and get as many clear laps, so that their gain will be leading the race and then using the car's qualities. So what else comes back into the pits.
Dominic Schwager also coming into the pits as well.
Andrea Bertolini, somebody I'm familiar with work with other forms of motorsport, and of course the vital ingredient back at Ferrari's base, doing a lot of the testing for the team at their test track at Fiorano, and a very, very useful member of that Vodafone Maserati team.
See the cars that are just filing through there one by one. Let's pick up the other Maserati here, car number 34.
This could be the quickest lap we have seen so far. We saw him do a very, very quick... No! Yes, it is.
He does. He goes quickest by a 10th and a half. Very good lap by Alessandro Pierguidi.
And the reason he went quickly on this lap is because at the beginning of this lap, he was the fastest through the final sector, So he got a really strong run out of turn 16 all the way down the pit straight, and that's where he began the good work of getting this provisional pole.
That's a decent lap coming in there from Alexander Margaritis as well in the Corvette. Goes second fastest overall.
And that's the danger for Maserati. You get a Corvette on the front row of the grid. When the safety car pulls off at the start of the race, the grunt, the low-down grunt that big Detroit V8's got is very, very hard to challenge.
So with about 5.5 minutes to go, Thomas Enger, 11th fastest, missing out. Pertti Kuismanen also missing out, 12th fastest in his Corvette. Seiji Ara in the, Max Nielsen in the Swiss racing team Nissan, 13th fastest. They're missing out as well. Jan Clary in the Aston Martin is currently 15th fastest. Michael Crum, 14th fastest. All these guys missing out unless they can go slightly faster. Alex Muller in the Maserati missing out, car number 33. So one Maserati goes quicker. Can the other match it? No, 16th fastest is all they can muster on that particular lap.
But it does sound glorious. V12 Maserati engine, full throttle down into turn one. It's just pure music.
Only done 2 laps though, so they've got a bit of catching up to do. Jan Clary, for instance, currently on his 5th lap altogether. So the Maserati that we were talking about just struggling a bit for track time at the moment. The Triple H team, Hagersport Maserati. Meanwhile, we go back into the top 10. Miguel Ramos, 9th fastest overall, kind of on the cusp at the moment. There's the Corvette, Alex Margaritis, currently 2nd fastest. At a 10th off our quickest man, Alessandro Pierguidi, the Maserati MC12.
There's the sister car. So up the hill out into turn 11, and then the drop down around turn 12.
Look at this, personal best in the 1st and 2nd sectors, but he's still 0.7 of a second off the pace at the moment. So pushing a bit harder, going quicker, but making a huge impression, certainly on the top 10.
Let's have a look and see it again. Very wide in the exit of 15, and really a lost amount of effort and time, so not to expect too much from this particular run with 3 minutes and 20 seconds of the session remaining. Again, very changing gear at the point where the car was right on the very edge of its limit. 1:43.1, 7th place still.
Just looking at the tyre situation, I think this track is very demanding on tyres, and you possibly only get the one very good lap out of them. So once you get to 3 minutes and below, no time to come into the pits, change rubber, get back out again. Difficult to see where you can make up the time.
Miguel Ramos, so what he's going to do is he's going to give the Portuguese fans something to scream and shout about. 43.3, and going to do very much 4th row of the grid, if that would be the grid for the race. But of course one more session of qualifying to go, but just inside the top 10. Doesn't need to feel too comfortable about that either.
Yep, 8th fastest into the top 10, that's fine. Michael Crum, by the way, the German driver in that sumo-powered Nissan, has set the 2nd fastest time overall. Crum just put in a stonking lap there to go less than 1/10 of a second off the pace currently being set by Alessandro Pierguidi. We can ride with and focus on Thomas Enger now. 1.1 seconds off the pace, down in 11th place. He has got to find more pace, or the winning combination of Enger and Turner from the Nürburgring aren't going to make it into qualifying 3 here today.
Well, he needs to find at best 0.3 of a second. Ideally he needs to find more, but 0.3 will just about drag him into the top 8, and it's a large ask because it doesn't seem an awful lot of time, but when you're already pushing to the limit, and the stopwatch is 1.5 minutes remaining, so it's going to be a tough task for Thomas Enger. Interesting that time from the Nissan. I mean, at 1:43.3, we haven't really seen Nissan running competitively at all in any of these 2 sessions. All of a sudden, there's the time. I mean, that's the potential of the Nissan GTR, probably the most powerful engine here this weekend. and if they can get the rest of the act to work along with the horsepower, then they could be a contender.
Enger's backed off. He's not going to go any faster. Is he saving himself for one more lap as car number 25 crosses the line? Jos Menton in 10th place at the moment, and he's about 7/100ths of a second faster than Thomas Enger. There's not a huge amount in it between 10th and 11th. A couple of tenths of a second gap back then to the car in 12th place, the Corvette.
Just again, watching this Lamborghini, the two Reiter Lamborghinis certainly look to be a lot more lively around the back end of the car, on the circuit, on the bumps. Watch it coming down. You can see clearly that's one of the cars that is moving around more than the rest of the competition, and even the other two Lamborghinis.
And there, Maserati chatting as they wait to go back out again. Our championship leaders of Bertolini and Bartels, the car waiting for them back out onto the track action. You can see the checkered flags coming out now. So if you're on a lap, you can complete it. If you're not, then that's your session over. Oh, real aggressive work going on.
He's just struggling.
By Jos Menton. Struggling, but he's in the top 10 at the moment. This lap, I don't think is going to be any quicker. Just looking to see what Thomas Enger is doing. He's there or thereabouts, Enger. If he can just find that 7/100ths of a second, he might be able to manhandle that Aston Martin into the top 10 as the Maserati out in front puts a tyre in the dirt. That doesn't help when you're pushing hard behind.
No, it's not. I mean, it's just going to again be distraction for the Lamborghini, and Maserati, it's doing its thing, and again looking to try and consolidate their performance flag. Out session is over. So Ramos consolidates in 8th place.
He does, stays in 8th place. And looking now at Jos Menton and Thomas Enger. This is the battle for 10th and 11th. Menton comes into the pits. And I think Thomas Enger as well. Aston Martin in the background, I wonder. And he crosses the line now. And Thomas Enger is going to miss out.
It's a well-known face on the right, another Portuguese who is now, I've said it, name escapes me, but pivotal in the role of Mercedes-Benz and AMG. Domingos Piedade.
Well done.
Domingos Piedade, and he's got a very long association with Portuguese, but primarily with a lot of Brazilian drivers too. Enrique Banoldi being one of those.
Looking at Max Nielsen in the Nissan, the Swiss racing team Nissan, only 3 laps in pre-qualifying. They were trying to save their tyres, or they've not made it into qualifying 3, so they can save their tyres even more. 15th fastest. So he joins the bottom 6, or the bottom 8, I should say.
Big old lump of V8 iron in the front of that Nissan, but boy does it pull that car out of a corner.
It does. On board in the Maserati at the moment, cruising.
Yeah, just coming into the pit lane.
So much better balanced, aren't they, when they're just cruising around?
Well, that Maserati, I think, is pretty well balanced in any context. You know, the car looks pretty strong around the high-speed parts of the circuit.
So there you go, Maserati from Nissan, from Corvette, from the Vodafone Maserati, from Lamborghini is the top 5 here. Dumbrek and Crump, good lap, only a 10th off the pace. A couple of hundreds back to Henrici and Margaritis. Bertolini and Bartels, are they saving themselves for a dash for pole in qualifying 3? I wonder. Just missing out, Boucher and Bassange and Cacelli and Menton, Jos Menton and Thomas Enger, separated by just a few hundredths of a second at the end of qualifying 2. And then sadly, for Pedro Lamy, Portuguese driver, 13th was the best that they could muster. The Aston Martin's struggling just a touch. So let's hear from one of their drivers, double race.
Thomas Enger will be pushing absolutely to the limit of the Aston Martin to get those points.
Two Maseratis, though, go into this qualifying 3. Two Vitaphone Maseratis go into this qualifying 3. And I just wonder, is this an ominous sign for the weekend already? The leading team are both comfortably, I'd say, John, into the final part of qualifying.
One might think that what they're trying to do is just make sure they get into qualifying 1, then they may show their true potential.
Let's hear from one of the Vitaphone Maserati drivers, Pedro Lamy.
Pedro, at your home track, was it really important for you to get through to Q3?
It would be nice, but we are not anymore. So, but the race it will start today, and we'll see how is the result. But it's difficult. The gap are very small between everybody, and if you don't have a clean lap, and then you are not on the pace.
And how did you feel the Aston Martin was out there today?
I mean, I don't think this track is the best for the Aston Martin. At the moment, it's quite bumpy, so the car is not working properly. But hopefully, we can even improve a bit the car for the race, because the car was not very nice to drive.
Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you.
OK, that's Pedro Lamy, the Aston driver. I'm thinking of the wrong Portuguese guy, John.
Yeah, but he's not going to be asked back again after those comments, I'm quite certain. But anyway, he's totally honest about what the car is doing. And some circuits, are smoother than others. I happen to think that bumps are a part.
What about AstroTurf?
Well, I think we might have to have a bit of relaying of the AstroTurf. And I think that's coming out of the exit out of turn 5 up the uphill left-hand corner.
Yeah. And
drivers just letting the car run wide. And ordinarily, the adhesives that are used to bond the AstroTurf to the tarmac or the concrete is bulletproof. But the bullets certainly have gotten through it.
You do wonder, and you see a lot of problems, don't you? AstroTurf being, sucked up, as it were, by the downforce that these cars are creating. You see it in single-seater categories as well. Do we need AstroTurf by the side of tracks? What's wrong with a bit of gravel? Or?
Why not put this concrete wall I'm talking about?
Exactly.
Let's get back to basics. There's a racetrack for a driver to drive on. If he wants to extend the racetrack, then have the racetrack extended. But basically, there's got to be restrictions on what drivers are getting away with, and I think we should restrict them.
Let's head back down to Haley in the pit lane.
Fred, did you enjoy the track today?
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult for us. We don't pass in the Q3, and now we start at 14th position. I hope that we can do the same race at Nürburgring or Spa, where when we start very long on the place, on the grid, we come back very quick, and I hope.
Okay. Thank you, Fred.
Haley Coxon, our pit lane reporter, outside Aston Martin, as we look once again at Andrea Bertolini and Michael Bartel's Maserati.
I mean, it's such a polished act, this whole Maserati with Bartels and Bertolini, Miguel Ramos and Enrique Benoldi. They just know so well. Looking at Andrea Bertolini sitting in the car. And again, a driver who, racing miles is one thing. The testing miles that Andrea has done over the years, and in particular around Fiorano, he must be into the 7 figures of almost miles. Forget about the laps, certainly miles. And of course, then don't forget in the simulator as well.
Green light is on. I wonder if he starts to feel the pressure at this stage as well, knowing that he's put his car on pole 3 times so far this season in the previous 6 rounds. In Brno and at Paul Ricard in the following round. Does he start to feel the pressure, or is this start to get easier the more experience you've got?
I think it's a combination of both. There's always pressure, and you know that you can never relax, you can never take for granted that because you are in the position you are in the championship, that it's a given that you're going to be there for the start of the race. And you've got to push, but at the same time you've got to be careful on the tyre usage. You've got a limited number of tyres, and that's going to see you through the principal event on Sunday afternoon. So you want the tyres in their best condition, but equally you need to use those tyres to give you the opportunity, in particular with the Maserati. They need to be able to lead and then use that to gain their own momentum and not get held up trying to overtake other cars. Where, for example, down the straight, and with the Nissan, for example, in sheer straight line performance, the Nissan, no doubt, will outperform the Maserati.
The Nissan we're looking at the moment, Peter Dumbrek on board. If you want to follow his progress just a little more closely, don't forget the live timing on GT1world.com. Live screening as well to follow all the action round by round, all the highlights up there, and you can even see myself, David Croft and John Watson having a little preview and indulging in a spot of fishing by the pool yesterday.
Yeah, I should have definitely tried for something a little bit smaller, but I always target fish that are never going to catch.
Aim high, settle for low. Is that the motto?
Take anything you can get at the minute, that's the motto.
So the qualifying 3 session, 8 minutes of it is now underway. Mark Henrici in that beautiful Phoenix Corvette. And he's up against Lamborghini, Maserati, Nissan as well.
Yeah, big lock on turn 4. Aggressively pulls the car back on the exit, swings it over to the left, lets it run right to the wide. That's where we saw the AstroTurf being picked up. There's turn 6. No, it's not. There's turn 14 up into turn 15.
And we'll just see a little replay of that lock-up that you were talking about there, John.
Yeah, and we've noticed this into turn 4 a lot on the Ford GTs and on the Lamborghinis. Again, the on-loaded inside wheel.
And just caught out a bit by the bump. The bump came before the lock-up, just maybe threw the car just out of sync a little bit.
So on board with Nissan. There's the V8s.
Absolute. It is like Barry White, isn't it? It's in full song, rasping, throaty sound.
No, it's a very powerful engine, and as I mentioned a little earlier in one of our broadcasts, this, in many respects, the Nissan is the true spirit of GT1 racing. And once the team really get a grasp of what they've got, only set up at the beginning of the year, and really learning it all the way through in racing, rather than having the benefit of the seasons testing and racing behind it.
Looks quite effortless as well in the cockpit at the moment. Peter Dumbrek not fighting hard, not working too hard on that steering wheel. Just little adjustments here and there, but certainly no struggles on the steering wheel. But does that mean he's sacrificing the pace a little bit as well? Nicky Pastorelli has just put in a time of 1:43.8. That's the first time, that's the benchmark for pole position.
So Lamborghini provisionally hold that. We have to ride on board with Nissan as we're doing. Push the car up through that turn 13.
Yeah, the Maserati of Andrea Bertolini will just break off from riding on board with Peter Dumbrek. And you can see the Maserati through the first 2 sectors significantly quicker than Peter Dumbrek had managed in that Nissan, but not the quickest overall through the first sector. Mark Henrici at the moment going strongly for Corvette.
Yeah, quickest in the first sector, so we'll maybe expect to see the Corvette number 13 improve, but Dumbrek in fact goes second in Nissan, 1:46, 1:46. Of course, only 2 times to date have been recorded, so it's Nicky Pastorelli.
This is now provisional pole. This is where the big boys lay down their marker. A full second faster than Nicky Pastorelli. Great lap put in by Andrea Bertolini.
Absolutely, and that's what maybe I was trying to allude to, that the first 2 qualifying segments, just get your car through, do it on the tyres you've got. Now when it matters for pole position, then you can have a real go. Well,
Henrici now crosses the line. He takes provisional pole by 0.03 of a second, the Corvette. Remember, Corvette, the only one of our marks not to have won a championship race this season. They have won qualifying races, and they've got provisional pole in this one.
And 283 kilometres per hour on pit straight did not hurt the Corvette. That's the power the Corvette engine has got, and that's the quickest. And again, just watching the bodywork, just catching the outside edge of the body of the tyre on the Nissan coming through turns 9 and 10.
Meanwhile, Maxime Martin in the Ford Mark VDS Racing Team GT, well, that's gone second fastest overall, and not a huge amount of difference between Henrici and Maxime Martin's time there. Once again, it's down to hundredths of a second. Sadly for Peter Dumbrek, he needs to make up 3 seconds. It's hundredths ain't good enough at the moment for
no,
this
it's
Nissan.
not, but he's only done an out lap. this is going to be the first serious attempt at getting the Nissan up onto the front row of the grid. 142.3 to beat, 142.7. So he's going to be quite happy with provisional third place. 3 minutes remaining.
3 minutes remaining. As Peter Dunbrake's teammate, Miguel Crump, watches on. Nigel Stepney there on the pit wall. And that Corvette through the first sector yet again, John, absolutely electric.
Yeah, so again, a little bit of that is, I think, the top speed that we're seeing from the Corvette. That's certainly gaining it time, but the basic car is also doing its job. 142.3 was his best, 42.5 this lap, so 2/10ths down, but that's reasonably consistent, bearing in mind that that was probably a new tyre time, and the second lap is always going to be marginally slower.
I'm just wondering...
and he's backed off now.
Yeah, well, he'll back off now, but I'm just wondering, do you get one good lap on these tyres, and that's it? If you don't make it count on your first flying lap, you've had it. 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go. All eyes trained on the track, spectators and snappers alike, and it's Corvette by 0.03 of a second from Ford, 0.3 back to Nissan, and then the Maseratis.
And that's Maserati's worry. They do not and there we see, oh, that's a Nissan going backwards, Peter Dunbrake. So
trying too hard, down at the hairpin.
Yeah, just got it wrong on the brakes, and the back end of the car swung around, so...
No, that's not down the hairpin. I just wonder. That's
up at the turn coming through turn 13 into turn 14. But again, we saw a Nissan this morning do an identical thing as with just Peter Dunbrake. Just that part of the racetrack, you're just off the power, but the car attitude, getting on the brakes. It's a bit like the old adage: don't turn into a corner, turn, lift off, and brake. And in effect, that's what we saw Peter Dunbrake do in a quarter mile.
Now, Bertolini, interestingly, personal best through the middle sector. I just wonder, has he lost just a little bit too much time to try and get that car, which is currently 5th on the grid, up a little bit higher? And it's so important to get the car as high as possible for these qualifying races. You only score points for the top 3. The finishing order of the qualifying race dictates the grid order for the championship race, where the top 10 score points.
Yeah, well, he's decided that's enough. I'm coming in and save what I've got. So I'm going to start in that provisional 5th place, well, not directly behind on the grid, but directly behind in terms of scoring. So the two Maseratis, 4th and 5th, the two Vitaphone racing team, Michael Bartels cars. But it's V8 power that's dominated the front row of the grid. In fact, the first 3 positions dominated by V8s.
And I think Corvette can start to anticipate and celebrate a pole position at the moment, because I think Mark Henrici done enough to put them on the top. There's only one other car out on the track at the moment, and that's Andrea Bertolini, and that's going to be coming in soon, I think, as well, because he seems to have backed off quite considerably. Checkered flag is now out, but there's no car on the track that are going to take the checkered flag. It is Corvette's pole. Mark Henrici for the Phoenix Racing team, and putting in an awful lot of hard work over the weekend. The boys at the garage enjoying themselves there. Henrici's teammate, Alexander Margaritis. Smiles all around down at Corvette. Why not? They seem very happy indeed, John.
Well, they've done the first part of the day's work. They've got that car into pole position. They've got a quick car in a straight line, and I think that's going to be one of their greatest strengths, is that they can use that, and the ability to pull alongside, particularly the into turn 1. That's going to be a strength I suspect we'll see them use a lot.
They were qualifying race winners as well in Abu Dhabi. They've got the best possible chance to double that success here in the Algarve this afternoon. Only 0.03 of a second in it, though, at Ford GT. Bit of grunt off the line, you just never know. Might be able to pressurise a bit going into turn 1. Dunbrake and Crumb, good effort to get the Nissan 3rd on the grid, and then the two Maseratis. Interestingly, though, the number 2 Maserati, Benaldi and Ramos, not the championship leaders, that finished higher up in this qualifying session. Dominic Schwager, 34 today, 6th best for him.